Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in to learn about how reverse racism cannot exist under current US structures. If you haven't already, please check out my other videos. I know I say this every week, but it's particularly relevant for today's content. The roadmap today is pretty simple, but I'll start by one, discussing what this concept of racism or reverse racism even is, and then two, I'll get into how reverse racism cannot exist with our current definition and framework of racism, and then I'll conclude by having a real moment to just sit and digest what the information from video 1 to now means for us non-Black individuals. The term reverse racism or reverse discrimination actually emerged around the 70s with affirmative action, and I'm going to be reading a definition provided by a 1979 California Review article that gave a definition of reverse discrimination. It will be from my laptop, which is right here because my brain is tired. She's very small today. But the California Law Review article defines reverse discrimination as a phenomenon where individual Black people and members of other minority groups began to be given benefits at the expense of whites who, apart from race, would have had a superior claim to enjoy them. And I'm itching to say something about that, but I'm not going to right now. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what Google has to say. So Google, on the other hand, says that reverse racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism on the basis of race directed against a member of a dominant or privileged racial group. Again, there's no perfect definition for reverse racism, just as there isn't one for racism, but it's a good starting point for our discussions. Recall that our definition of racism is actually that racism is a system of advantage based on race. It is a hierarchy. This is actually very similar to a formula that's popular in sociological literature, that racism equals power plus prejudice. In these overlapping frameworks, white people can arguably experience prejudice at the individual or micro level. Just as a white person raised in a predominantly white environment is going to have biological responses in their brain when they see a Black person, the same will happen in Black individuals. And just as that white person from the white environment won't be able to recognize other race faces as easily as they recognize white faces, the same would happen for Black individuals raised in a predominantly Black environment. This is because, again, at that individual implicit level of prejudice, it's about in-group versus out-group. The difference comes in at the meso and macro levels. Those levels represent the power part of our formula, and then the hierarchy and systems parts of our definition, which are so important. Once you get to the meso and macro levels, there is no racism to the reverse racism definition, and the entire concept falls apart because nothing happening at those levels is racist or discriminatory. At the meso level, I discussed over-policing of POC communities and gentrification, but whenever I discussed those examples in previous videos, I already mentioned how white people are less likely to have excessive force used against them in police interactions. There's less police presence in predominantly white communities in general, and because white people are more likely to be homeowners than POC, they're more likely to be the gentrifiers than the people being displaced by gentrification. So even if we translated our example of a white woman misidentifying a Black man in a lineup and sending him to prison and change it to a Black woman misidentifying a white man, the consequences beyond that person-to-person checkpoint are going to be much less damning for a white man than they are for a Black man. As you can see, there is no hierarchy working against white people because they're at the top, reaping the best benefits and the smallest consequences at the meso and macro levels of this system of racism. That's not to say that prejudices white people face at the micro level aren't important. It's just to say that they're not racist because the aggressor, who's not a white person, doesn't have any systemic power. So that's basically it for new content. I know that this video was much shorter than some of my other videos in comparison, so I hope that you're not walking away feeling unfulfilled. I just didn't want to use this time to argue against examples that white people cite as evidence for reverse racism, because I think a lot of news articles kind of do that already. My hope is that by helping people learn about the issues that Black people face, or helping them see racism on multiple levels, will kind of do that arguing for me. So hopefully with this video and the other two videos, I've accomplished that by now. So going back to that bit about not wanting to argue, I want to recognize that the reason why white folks feel alienated or they defend this phenomenon so aggressively is because they're berated for holding this opinion or feeling like they've experienced these things, and I've been guilty of being the berater. So my goal instead is to try to use these videos to humanize people who hold opinions that are different from mine, and also try to use my privilege to help humanize Black individuals as well. But since this video is the conclusion of the first big point that everyone who's not Black is racist, now is the perfect time to self-assess and see if all of the pieces are fitting together. I really encourage you to check in with how you felt during this video and my other videos. Were you angry, frustrated, uncomfortable? Were you really excited for what was coming next? Were you already on board with me? These all are or can be really good things. I hope that all the non-Black individuals watching can see that these videos aim to help you accept the word racist and know that sometimes it may apply to you and other times you'll be doing things that are anti-racist. I never said it explicitly before because I think it's healthy to sit with some discomfort and confusion, but I'm saying it now so that we can move forward. Ibram Kendi said in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, that we shouldn't make racist a bad word. And I agree, because if we make it a bad word, nobody will take on the label and they'll instead deny that they're racist or pretend that we live in a race-neutral or post-racial society when we don't. Instead, Kendi says that you can either be racist or anti-racist, and that can change at any given moment. So even if you've identified some of your own thoughts or actions that are racist, and if you haven't, I would encourage you to think a little harder because they're definitely there, you can be anti-racist at any time, and we'll get into how toward the end of this series. To conclude though, I'm just going to leave you with this quote which says, "When you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression." What things done to help Black, Indigenous, or other POC make you feel oppressed, and why? Like, comment, subscribe, and share, and tune in next Sunday where we move on to big topic number 2, which is how Black people can internalize racism and perpetuate prejudices. For real this time. But yeah, see you next week. Bye! So update, I was just editing my video and I decided that now that we've reached the end of the big first point that you could check out some of Dr. Stephen Roberts' content. Remember, he's the guy that we're basing our framework of racism off of, so I don't know how to flip my camera, so I'm just gonna show you here. But that's Stephen Roberts, that's the video. I'll be linking it down below, but please make sure to check it out. I think it'd be really helpful and I hope that you guys are getting more interested into exploring some of this stuff on your own. But yeah, that's all I got. Bye!